Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. My former boss, Derek Thompson, was, simply put, an absolute ducking a-hole. He was the type of person who had the ability to be so condescending while acting as if he was doing you a favor. His condescending attitude was sometimes downright abusive, and he seemed to have a particular problem with all of the female employees. He'd constantly hover over their shoulders, making comments like, "Are you sure you understand how to do that?" Or, "Maybe I should explain this again, but slower this time." He loved to scream at people regardless of how small their mistake was, if there even was one. During one memorable incident, he yelled at Sarah from accounting for 5 straight minutes because she used the wrong font in an internal memo. "How hard is it to follow simple formatting guidelines?" he bellowed across the office. He was a slave driver and expected everyone to sacrifice their own personal lives for their job. The thing that sparked this revenge was him telling me to miss my older sister's wedding rehearsal dinner to come into work on a day that I had already booked off 3 months in advance. "But I already approved Jennifer's time off for that day," he sneered. "We can't have 2 people out. The business needs come first." No one liked him. Me and all of my colleagues in the department, around 10 or so, couldn't stand him being here anymore. So we did the protocol. All of us piled together the evidence we had of him not sticking to booked-off holiday schedules and having inappropriate and sometimes abusive language, and we brought it all into one Google Doc. This was step 1. "We need more than just written complaints," said Mike from sales. "We need something concrete." Step 2 was getting a cherry on top. We did this by getting him to do one of his screaming tantrums at one of us. We wanted this to be as damning as possible, and Emma, our newest hire, who was just 23, volunteered to be the bait. She made an intentional beginner's mistake in her paperwork, something bound to get her roared at, and the idiot took the bait. You see, he liked to do his scoldings in front of all of us to prove a point or rule by fear, as he called it. This gave us the perfect opportunity to film it from behind our desks and add it to the Google Doc. "Do you think you're qualified to work here?" he screamed at Emma. "Because right now, I'm seriously questioning your basic competence." Now you see, in our company, there's this really poorly designed email system. You can send an email to an entire department, and I mean entire, as long as you have its name and manager's name. All of this information was completely and freely given to employees, which means that anyone could send whatever email they wanted to the entire company, including the CEO. So one morning in September 2024 at 10 a.m., to ensure that as many people would be working as possible, we made a burner email and sent the Google Doc through an email to everyone in the company. It took a little while as there were many departments to get through, but we got there in the end. We gave the email the subject: Derek Thompson, Vital Information, West Branch, Sales Department. Of course, Derek received the email as well, and you could hear the clutter from his office as people all over the company were contacting him to ask him what the hell this was about. "This is a violation. This is slander," we heard him shouting through his office door. HR did a light investigation into him and took heavy disciplinary action. As far as I know, he wasn't directly fired, but instead resigned. And a month after that, we never saw him again. He was replaced by a new manager named Steve, who was also an a-hole, but just less of one. His expressions during the whole ordeal helped me sleep at night. The next one is an entitled People's Story. Let me start by saying that I never expected to become the center of a neighborly war, but here we are. I'm a 45-year-old software engineer who got lucky with some early tech investments and managed to buy my dream property, a beautiful 15-acre estate just outside the city limits. The property has been in the same family for generations, and when I purchased it 3 years ago, I was thrilled to find it came with no homeowner association restrictions or other encumbrances. The estate includes a historic main house from the 1920s, which I've been gradually restoring, along with several outbuildings, an old barn I converted into a workshop, and plenty of wooded areas. It's set back from the main road by a long private driveway, and I've always valued my privacy and peace. The trouble started when a new housing development broke ground on some adjacent farmland about a year ago. Willow Creek Estates, they called it. One of those cookie-cutter suburban developments with identical McMansions packed together on tiny lots. I wasn't thrilled about having neighbors so close, but I figured live and let live. My property was well screened with mature trees, and I had no intention of interacting much with the development. That changed when I met Karen Thompson, the self-appointed president of the Willow Creek Homeowner Association. She showed up at my front gate one Saturday morning in her white Range Rover, pressing the intercom button repeatedly until I answered. "Hello?" I said through the speaker. "This is Karen Thompson, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. I need to speak with the property owner immediately regarding several violations." I was confused but decided to drive down in my golf cart to meet her at the gate. As I approached, I could see she was dressed like she'd just stepped out of a country club. Tennis whites, pearl necklace, and that signature "I want to speak to the manager" haircut. "I'm the owner," I said as I pulled up. "What seems to be the problem?" Karen pulled out a tablet and started scrolling dramatically. "Well, where do I even begin? Your fence height exceeds our 6-foot maximum by at least 2 feet. That barn workshop of yours is an unauthorized structure. The paint color on your house isn't from our approved palette. And don't even get me started on those solar panels on your roof. Those are strictly prohibited in our community guidelines." I couldn't help but laugh, which only made her face turn redder. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. My property isn't part of Willow Creek Estates or your homeowner association. This is private land that's been here long before your development." Karen's eyes narrowed. "That's impossible. Our development encompasses this entire area. You must not have read the paperwork properly when you purchased. Let me be clear. All properties in this vicinity fall under Willow Creek Homeowner Association jurisdiction." "Actually, that's completely incorrect," I replied, trying to stay patient. "I have the deed and property surveys right in my office. This estate is independently owned and has never been part of any homeowner association. You have no authority here." "We'll see about that," Karen snapped. "Expect to hear from our lawyers. We can't have one Rouge property destroying our community's property values with their eyesores and violations." With that, she got back in her Range Rover and peeled out, spraying gravel from my driveway. I shook my head and went back to my Saturday projects, figuring that would be the end of it once she checked the property records. I couldn't have been more wrong. This was just the beginning of Karen's crusade to force my property under homeowner association control, a battle that would escalate far beyond what I ever imagined possible. The next week, I started receiving official-looking violation notices in my mailbox, printed on Willow Creek Homeowner Association letterhead. They cited increasingly ridiculous infractions: unauthorized livestock on premises, deer observed grazing on lawn, excessive tree height exceeding 30 feet, unapproved wind chimes creating noise pollution, historical architecture not conforming to neighborhood aesthetic standards. I collected the notices, but otherwise ignored them. Then came the certified letters from Wallace and Mitchell, attorneys at law, the homeowner association's legal representation. They demanded I either bring my property into compliance with homeowner association standards within 30 days or face legal action. I scheduled a consultation with my own real estate attorney, Sarah Chen, who had handled my property purchase. She reviewed everything and confirmed what I already knew. The homeowner association had absolutely zero jurisdiction over my land. "This is honestly ridiculous," Sarah said, shaking her head as she looked through the violation notices. "Your property predates their development by nearly a century. The original deed and property lines are crystal clear. They have no legal standing whatsoever." "So what do we do?" I asked. "First, I'll send them a firmly worded cease and desist letter laying out the facts. If they persist, we can file for an injunction to legally bar them from harassing you. We might even have grounds for a civil suit if they continue making false claims about their authority over your property." Sarah sent the cease and desist letter the next day. Karen's response, she doubled down hard. "I started noticing cars from the development slowly driving past my property, passengers obviously taking photos. Karen created a Facebook group called Save Willow Creek's Property Values, where she posted pictures of my violations and rallied other homeowner association members to her cause. Things got uglier when she started sending homeowner association members to knock on my gate at all hours, demanding I comply with their rules. One evening, I checked my security cameras to find 3 people with clipboards measuring my front fence with laser tools. "Excuse me," I called out through the intercom. "You're trespassing on private property. Please leave immediately." "We're from the Willow Creek Homeowner Association Compliance Committee," a woman announced. "We're documenting violations for our legal team." "This is private property not subject to your homeowner association," I replied firmly. "Leave now or I'll call the police and report you for trespassing." They scrambled back to their cars, but not before I heard one of them say, "He can't keep fighting this forever. Karen says everyone has to comply eventually." The final straw came when I returned home from a business trip to find that someone had placed large violation stickers all over my front gate and mailbox. The red and black stickers were designed to be extremely difficult to remove, leaving damage when peeled off. My security cameras caught Karen herself placing them in the middle of the night. I'd had enough. I called Sarah and told her to proceed with legal action. We filed for an emergency injunction against the homeowner association, and Karen specifically, citing harassment and vandalism. We also filed a civil suit for damages related to the vandalism and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The day of the initial hearing, Karen showed up with her lawyer looking supremely confident. That changed quickly as Sarah methodically presented our evidence. Original property deeds and surveys showing my land was never part of the development security footage of Karen vandalizing my property. Documentation of hundreds of harassing notices and letters screenshots from Karen's Facebook group showing her orchestrating the harassment campaign. Testimony from the property developers confirming my estate was explicitly excluded from their plans. Historical records showing my property's independence dating back to the 1920s. The judge was not amused by Karen's behavior. When her lawyer tried to argue that the homeowner association had the right to enforce community standards on adjacent properties, the judge cut him off. Counselor, are you seriously arguing that a private homeowner association can unilaterally seize authority over independent properties that clearly predate their existence? Properties that were never included in any homeowner association agreement or documentation? Because if so, I suggest you review your basic property law. Karen's face got redder and redder as the judge continued. This appears to be a clear case of harassment and attempted coercion by your client and her organization. I'm granting the emergency injunction. The homeowner association and all its members are hereby prohibited from placing any notices or other materials on the plaintiff's property, attempting to enforce homeowner association rules or regulations on the plaintiff's land, harassing or confronting the plaintiff regarding alleged violations, making false claims about homeowner association authority over the plaintiff's property, entering the plaintiff's property without express permission. Violation of this order will result in significant penalties. We'll proceed with the civil suit for damages in 60 days. Karen stormed out of the courtroom in tears, but it wasn't over. She had one last desperate move to play. The next homeowner association meeting, she tried to convince the members to pool their money to buy my property outright. She claimed they could force a sale through eminent domain, completely false, or pressure me to sell by making my life difficult, illegal under the injunction. What she didn't count on was that many homeowner association members were actually sick of her tyrannical behavior. Someone recorded her unhinged rant and sent it to both the homeowner association's lawyer and the court. Her lawyer immediately withdrew from representing her, and several homeowner association board members called an emergency vote to remove her as president. The civil suit never made it to trial. The homeowner association's insurance company, seeing the writing on the wall, offered a substantial settlement to avoid further liability. They also insisted on Karen's resignation from the board as a condition of maintaining their coverage. I accepted the settlement on 2 conditions. The homeowner association had to formally acknowledge in writing that they have no authority over my property and never will. Karen had to personally pay for professional removal of all violation stickers and repair of any damage to my property. These days, things are much quieter. The new homeowner association board is far more reasonable, focusing on actually managing their own development instead of trying to expand their power. Karen moved away a few months later, reportedly to a gated community where she's already causing problems with their homeowner association. I used part of the settlement money to install an even better security system and add some tasteful landscaping along my property line, all carefully designed to block the view from Willow Creek Estates while remaining fully compliant with local ordinances. The rest went to a legal defense fund for other homeowners facing homeowner association overreach. The funny thing is, if Karen had just been neighborly instead of trying to force her rules on everyone, we probably could have gotten along fine. I'm actually pretty meticulous about maintaining my property. I just do it on my own terms, not according to some arbitrary homeowner association guidelines. My attorney Sarah summed it up best over celebration drinks after the settlement was finalized. Some people just can't stand the idea that they can't control everything and everyone around them, but at the end of the day, property rights and the law will win out over petty tyranny every time. I'll drink to that. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go feed the unauthorized wildlife grazing on my non-homeowner association-approved lawn. The next one is a petty revenge story, so this was a long time ago, a little after I graduated college. I had just gotten my first job and was looking to move out of my parents' place. My aunt's best friend bought a house for her kids that were going to the very university I got employed at, and they needed roommates to help with the mortgage. It was a split house with a basement suite. I thought I'd be moving into the basement with her son and his friends, but upon moving in, I found out I was sharing the upstairs with her daughter. I knew the daughter, Nicole, from high school. She was 2 grades below me and had the reputation of being an uptight snob and a teacher's pet rat. My aunt insisted she had matured since then, and since I grew up with 3 sisters, it would be fine. The first month was okay, but slowly her true colors started coming out. Started with post-it notes on my bedroom door. Things like, "You're too noisy at night. Can you be a bit quieter? Can you put both toilet seats down?" to bigger things like, "Can your girlfriend cannot spend the night?" After you shower, do a full clean of the bathroom. She claimed that all boy piss in the shower, so I had to clean it after use with cleaning produces. Post-it note on the counter pointing to a single crumb stating I need to clean up all my messes. She'd also throw out any of my food that was in the fridge for more than 3 days, stating that it would spoil her food and ruin her milk. Her milk going sour was always because of my old food. Not because she bought a 4-liter jug and it took her a month to finish it. She complained any time my friends were over that they loud and messy slobs. Mind you, my friends were only over to pick me up or to meet up before going elsewhere. So they are at the most were there for a max of 30 minutes and hung out in my room. Her boyfriend was over all the time with his friends. They would leave half-eaten takeout everywhere. Sometimes they'd be there for days at a time, but after they left, it was always my mess or my friend's mess, and I had to clean everything up. Oh, and her BF always ate my food and drank my beers, but if I used a bit of one of her condiments, I had to replace the whole thing. Anytime I confronted Nicole or called her out on her BS, she ran off to her room and shut the door. Our rooms shared a wall, and she'd wait till I fell asleep, then kick, punch the wall, and scream for 2 to 3 hours like a lunatic. I brought up her behavior to her mom multiple times, but she never believed me. Nicole would constantly whine to her mom, which resulted in calls from my aunt idioting at me about how she did this favor for me and all I needed to be was good roommate. It got to the point I told my aunt to piss off and that her best friend's kid was a nut job. She also didn't believe my side of the story. One night, my GF called me in a panic. Her apartment flooded, and she needed a place to stay. I told her I could sneak her in for the night, and then the next day we'd ask the banshee if she could stay for a bit. My GF accidentally dropped a glass, which woke Nicole up. Nicole didn't know my GF was there that night and assumed it was me, which resulted in her kicking and screaming session. My GF did not stay at my place after that, but she did tell everyone in the 3 classes she shared with Nicole at the university they went to about how much of a psycho she was. This did not improve my living situation, but made everything worse. Shortly after, I broke my rental agreement, losing $500 and the damage deposited because Nicole had a meltdown and punched holes in the wall of her room, which somehow was my fault. I was told by Nicole and her mother I had to do a full cleaning of my room and the bathroom before I moved out. Here was my petty revenge since according to her, all boys piss in the shower. I did just that, and more. I pissed in her shampoo and conditioner, on her toothbrush, and in her skin lotion. I only told my friends this, and eventually my aunt a year later, after she brought up how I was a crappy roommate to her best friend's daughter, thought my aunt would have said something to her friend, but apparently she kept it to herself. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, I'm at a pub enjoying drinks with some friends when Nicole and her husband, boyfriend from our time living together, join our group. Nicole's husband apparently works with one of the people at our table. It's been 20 years, so I don't even bring anything up. But because Nicole and her husband are still crappy people, they go into telling everyone how much of an inconsiderate roommate I was 20 years ago, especially because I was apparently a charity case and how Nicole's mom pitied my living situation and let me live there. Most of my friends at the table have known me and have met my family, so they knew they were full of crap. Here's when I told Nicole what I did to her stuff, even after 20 years. The look of sheer disgust on her face was priceless. They left immediately after that. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I twisted and sprained my ankle Monday morning packing up our camp from Labor Day weekend. Having done this a few times in the past, I didn't want to bother to have it checked out. Who wants to pay $1,000 for urgent care to tell you to rest and ice it? Yay, America. So, I went to work Tuesday. I got morning stuff done and explained the situation to my boss. Told him I'd need to take the day because it was swollen and painful, and I needed to rest and be off of it in order for it to heal. He gets in a tizzy because God forbid anyone needs to miss work for anything at all ever, and snaps at me for not planning to go to the doctor. Wednesday I go into work, still limping and still wearing improper footwear. I can only fit the injured foot into a crock without unbearable pain. The first thing the boss says is, "Don't you think you should get that checked out? I don't understand why you don't want to just pay for it." I explain again that I've had this injury in the past. It's definitely not broken and honestly not even as swollen as it has been when I've done it before. I want to be at work to keep up on things and make everyone's job less difficult. I would just need to take it easy for a couple days, which isn't a problem, considering I can do 90% of the job from my desk and the 10% slack is beyond easy for everyone to pick up, especially when not being there makes them pick up 100% of it. This gets met with more attitude, so I ask if I'll be getting paid sick time for the day I missed yesterday. He says no, not without a doctor's note. You can visibly see the injury clear as day, and I'm trying here, so WTF. I'm fed up by this point, so a little later on I say okay and leave to go to the doctor's for the note he wants so badly, knowing full well what they'll say to treat it and that I'll need to be off of it for 3-5 days. After an x-ray and getting the yup it's sprained, keep doing what you've been doing, I let them know my boss asked for a note for missing a day of work to rest it. Doc asks if I want to be at work to do what I can and stay off of it as best as possible. I said that's what I've been trying to do, so I'm fine with that. I do have sick time if it would be more beneficial to be off of it for a couple days. She comes back with a note that I may return to work on 9/9, which would be Monday. I took a picture and shot it over to Boss Man, just the photo. He replies, "What wrong with ankle?" which I met with no response considering none is needed. He got his note. I just wanted a day of sick time, 8 hours. Now he's paying me 4 days, 32 hours. He can't refuse a second of it. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.